evening, everyone. I'm Marsha, and I love books. I mean, I love reading. I love the whole process of it, getting into the story, being invested in the characters, ultimately ending up with a tear-stained face every time I start getting emotional, which happens quite a lot. I think my favorite part about reading is getting to know new characters. It's like getting to meet new, different people every time I start a new book. It wasn't until recently that I realized I was wrong. I don't actually meet new, different people every time I start a new book. Instead, I meet the same ones over and over again. I meet different variations of the same white, straight, able-bodied characters. Now, after realizing this, I really needed to sit down and think about my conclusion. Because I didn't want to think of my favorite authors as sexist or racist or homophobic or anything. I respect them, and I still do. So I did some research, and I'm not going to lie to you, but the research completely broke my heart. In fact, it made me feel angry, upset, frustrated. Because the truth is, according to Publishers Weekly, of the 123 best-selling young adult novels of 2013, over 88% of those books were about white main characters, leaving only 12% of those books either about people of color or people who are completely unidentified. Let that sink in. Of the 123 best-selling young adult novels of 2013, only 12% of those books were about minorities. Think about it. The Hunger Games, Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, Divergent, Prodigy, Ready Player One. When you think about these main characters, what race do you see? Because usually, the answer is white. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like an awful lot of diverse representation to me. To me, that sounds an awful lot like a world that's apparently full of white, straight, perfect people. But look around. The world isn't like that. In fact, look around this room. In this very room of roughly 200 people, we are more than just one group. And yes, sometimes there's a different color supporting character thrown in here and there in order to make sure that the story is diverse and interesting. As if a character of color by themselves can't possibly be interesting. As if they can't possibly be heroes. As if the only thing they're really good for is either for comedic effect, filling up space, or being a source pity, as if they're only really good as secondary characters. Now, as someone who loves stories as much as I do and identifies as a person of color, I didn't want to stand for it. So I took some more time and I really thought about my favorite characters. I decided it would be interesting if I redesigned them, looked at them differently. See if my favorite characters being of a different race or having a different background would change anything about the story. Make anything more interesting. So, as part of this exhausting process, I reread the books, I looked online for more information on the characters. I even searched and researched the historical context of the setting in order to make sure everything would fit in perfectly and logically into the story. And spoiler alert, it does. Figure number one, probably one of my favorite characters of all time, Harry Potter. Let me give you the rundown. Out of all 7 books, Harry has been described as a boy with brilliant green eyes, messy black hair, a lightning-shaped scar on his forehead, and he wears a pair of round glasses. We know that the story of Harry Potter itself is set in Britain, so we can assume that he's British. However, that does not make him white. Yet, this is how he's been depicted in media. I'm talking everything from book covers to movie internet. White, white, and white. Even though the descriptions given in the books don't necessarily make him white. Just because he has green eyes does not make him white, and just because he's British does not make his skin color a specific skin color either. If you'll excuse my own artwork, here's how I see him. Harry Potter. Brilliant green eyes, messy black hair, a lightly shaped scar on his forehead, and a pair of brown glasses. But, as you can see, not white. In my head, Harry Potter is half Indian from his father's side and half white from his mother's side. This would make Harry Potter not only a half-blood by a wizarding bloodline, but quite literally a half-blood, a mixed-race character, making Harry Potter one of the very few biracial characters in young adult literature. Harry Potter would be representing over 9 million biracial people in the United States, according to 2010 census. And that's only in the States. Studies show that the amount of biracial people of the world has skyrocketed since the 2000s. Think of how many lives of biracial people Harry Potter would have touched if he were to be biracial. Harry Potter being biracial would have brought so much more death to the nurse's neglect when he was a child. Harry Potter being biracial would have been a little wink to Britain's historical culture in the 1990s, when Britain's population actually increased over 50% because of international immigrants. Harry Potter being mixed race would have meant that this phenomenal 7-book series had more than 8 people of color in it. Harry Potter being biracial would have meant so much to me, personally, as a mixed-race girl myself. Yet, people seem to imagine him as white, just like they imagine almost every other character out there as white, if the author does not explicitly state that the character could be anything other than white. Because people automatically assume that a character, especially a hero, is white. Because we've been told, it's been drilled into our heads that apparently white is synonymous to ideal. And even when an author does state or hint that a character could be anything other than white, sometimes people just choose to dismiss that. Take Katniss Everdeen, for example. In The Hunger Games, she's been described as a girl with black, long hair, gray eyes, and olive skin, but not white. It is so easy to depict her as anything other than white. Yet, this is how she's being depicted in media. And this is how I see her. Black hair, gray eyes, and olive skin. Not white. Katniss Everdeen being a strong, smart, female protagonist who isn't white is revolutionary. Especially when a series is this successful, especially when it's this influential. Whitewashing Katniss Everdeen is a huge game changer, and not in a good way. Because kids of color who are reading these books need that representation. We need that representation. We need more main characters of color so that kids don't feel like a supporting character. We need more main characters of color who aren't just there for comedic effect, who aren't just there to be a trope, who aren't just there to experience some sort of terrible fate, so that another white main character can go through a hero's journey. We need more main characters of color so that kids of color can have someone to look up to, instead of just accepting this force-fed idea that white is the ideal. And it doesn't only happen in young adult literature. It happens in everything. In comic books, in TV shows, in movies. White, straight, and able-bodied seem to be the default setting for every single hero out there. But the world isn't like that. There are over 7 billion of us on this planet. Every single one of us is different. Every single one of us has a story to tell. And it's so next time you see a character is white, ask yourself why. Don't just read, don't just watch. Question. Lack of representation isn't a work of fiction. It's propaganda. The way we're treating characters of color is translating into the way we're treating people of color. How do you expect to understand each other if we're only focusing on one group of people? The world is changing, and we need to start accepting that. We need to start embracing it. We need to start doing better. Step back. Look further. Make yourself see diversity. Thank you.